We'll get started.
No, I got a whole stack here.
Good evening, everybody. Today is Monday, March 14th, 2022. It's 6:30 p.m. Actually, it's a little bit later. It is the joint Board of Selectmen and FAA meeting. And the chair will call us to order. We always stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item 2 on the agenda is our consent agenda. And it's 2 items. One is the PACE program. We're going to get a presentation, Mr. Ruda, on how it relates to Stevens Mill. There you go.
Mr. Chairman, as you mentioned, there was a little bit of a technology issue, so I have printouts of the slide presentation if anybody's interested. Just raise your hand, I'll bring it over to you. If you don't already have it.
Okay, got it. And
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask Luke Mitchell to come on up and probably sit right here, and we can probably get a chair and pull over to the other one for the rest of the presentation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, you remember Luke Mitchell from, he's the project manager for the Stevens Mill project?
You? Yep.
Okay,
Please.
great. Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Rob Dolan. I work for Mass Development. I was asked by Luke to come to Dudley to kind of give you an overview of the PACE project, this Property Assessed Clean Energy project related to the Stevens Mills project. And so thank you for printing out the copies of the presentation. Hopefully it's helpful for you, and I'm happy to answer any questions. This is a brief presentation, so feel free to just jump in as we go, or just wait till the end, and we can, like I said, I want to leave a lot of time for questions. So for this, if you refer to the presentation, I work for Mass Development. Hopefully you folks are familiar with Mass Development. We're a state agency that helps cities and towns with economic development, community development. The next slide is Property Assessed Clean Energy. Of course, the acronym soup. It's called PACE, is what we like to call it, and allows commercial property owners to finance energy improvements, whether they're energy efficiency improvements, like new HVAC systems, or renewable energy improvements like solar panels on their roofs. The one nuance with this is that the repayment is via a betterment assessment on the property, and that's kind of where you folks will come in, and that's why it requires a municipal opt-in, since obviously the betterment assessment has to be on the property tax bill. But I'll get to that in a second. So why would a property owner want to do a PACE financing? There's some things under the PACE statute. It's a state statute that make it attractive to property owners. It's no new debt on the balance sheet. There's no payoff upon the sale of the property. So if the property owner sells the property, that betterment assessment stays with the land, travels with the land is what they call it. And the principle behind that is these energy efficiency improvements are saving the property owners over a number of years in the future, and so whoever is now owns that property is reaping the benefit of that, and so they're paying off this assessment going forward. And there's 20-year maximum amortization. So there's a lot of features for property owners that are really interested in doing PACE for energy efficiency improvements. Obviously, it helps kind of improve their bottom line. They're looking to cut costs and install these energy improvements. And for municipalities, why would they want to kind of support that? In essence, they're supporting a commercial property owner who's looking to do increasing energy efficiency, energy improvements, and also kind of helping their bottom line and helping them maintain, lower expenses and potentially, hopefully, reinvest in the company that's within the community's borders. So PACE is relatively new to Massachusetts. It started operating in 2020, but there's a national PACE market, over $2 billion financed. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on these slides. There's, the other New England states also do financings. The slide that kind of looks like with the pie chart like this. We typically see PACE financings in the $500,000 to $700,000 range. There's no maximum and there's no minimum on PACE financing. The next slide is PACE financing. PACE in Massachusetts, it looks like that. Unfortunately, I can't really see the slide numbers. But like I mentioned, it was launched in 2020. Mass Development is the lead program administrator. We work with cities and towns and commercial property owners and kind of putting it all together. I think it's slide 6. Slide 6. Unfortunately, the numbers are kind of like light green. We work with the Department of Energy Resources. They're kind of the technical people who kind of scrub whether the energy improvements are actually going to save the property owners a significant amount of money. And there's a host of information on our website and the Mass Development website. Slide 7 is kind of the PACE flow funds. It's got the blue circles on it. This is kind of probably of the most interest to you folks. And so how does it really work? We have independent third-party capital providers, lenders, that provide the property owner with money to do the energy improvements. And then the property owner repays the lender over whatever amount of years that the terms are, whether it's 5, 10, or 20 years. The municipality bills the property owner and collects the assessment, and then it's remitted back to the capital provider. So the reason there's a municipal opt-in for this program, because you folks need to, if you choose to opt in to update, and you have a property owner that wants to move forward, if you support that, then you just need to update your tax collecting software. And let me just pause on that for a second. Mass Development totally understands that municipal folks are doing a lot with little, and not every community does a betterment assessment. Some communities do betterment assessments. Some communities don't do betterment assessments. So we have hired a consultant that kind of specializes in working with municipalities on updating their tax collection software. And the good news about that is the frequency of the betterment assessment coincides to whatever your tax collection cycle is. So if it's annual, semi-annual, the legislation's written so that if a property owner wants to do this, the tax collection has to be in line with however you folks bill. So next slide, I believe slide 8, it just shows eligible properties. It's only existing buildings, and it's only commercial, not-for-profits, and multifamily housing for 5 units or more. So, office buildings, malls, Stevens Mills. The next slide is slide 9, eligible measures. So pretty much any energy efficiency measure, like HVAC systems, we see a lot of lighting, windows. We see a lot of folks looking for solar panels. And this is one of those programs where we hope that a property owner is kind of taking a holistic view, and if they do a financing, they're doing a bunch of stuff that will they can reap the benefit for. We've done 2 projects so far. It's been adopted it was adopted in 2020. We have 51 communities that have opted in to the PACE program. We have done 2 deals so far. One of them was in Greenfield, slide 10. It was a blighted historic 12,000 square foot building in Western Mass. They did solar panels and a host of different energy improvements. They did about $450,000 for 20 years. I think for this deal, the property owner got about 5.9% interest rate. The interesting thing about this financing is that they were able to include in the financing go retroactively. So they did energy improvements before they did the financing, and they were able to include that under the umbrella. The next one is in Boston, a much larger facility, slide 11. They did $787,000, 20 years. So both of these required mortgage holder consent, and so this is kind of another important part of the program that I think is an important highlight for you folks. And so if there's an existing mortgage on the property, then it is required to get mortgage holder consent to have the PACE assessment put on that property. And the reason for that is property taxes are like at the top of kind of the flow of funds. So the PACE assessment is subordinated to the property taxes, so it comes after that. So the property taxes must be paid first, then the PACE assessment must be paid, and then any mortgage payment after that is then subordinated to the PACE assessment. So most folks are asked, why would a bank want to subordinate their mortgage payment? And the reason there's 2 mortgage holder consents on each one of these is because they realized this was helping the property owner lower expenses and improving the likelihood that they would stay current on the mortgage payments, and also it's increasing the value of the property by increasing, installing these energy improvements. It increases the overall value of the capital asset. Next slide, on slide 12, key elements. Like I mentioned, municipal opt-in one time is required. The maximum financing is 20 years. The energy cost savings must exceed the cost of the improvements. Otherwise, obviously, we wouldn't want a property owner pursuing a financing if they're not going to reap the benefit of the energy savings. I mentioned that if the property is sold, the remaining PACE assessment stays with the property, the retroactive consideration. And then this is third-party financing, so it's not city or town funding. It's not the property owner issuing the debt. This is capital provider providing funds to that property owner. And only a few more slides left. Slide 13. The betterment. This is an important slide actually, because the next question we typically get when we meet with cities and towns is what is our role if they default? Like, do we have to go in and go in and collect and remedy and enforce the collection? No, you do not. On the PACE program, you do not. You're not. The city and town are not included in any default proceedings. It's in essence, it's just kind of like a mortgage, how a city or town would act with it if there's a private mortgage on the property. The lien is assigned to the city, and then it's assigned to mass development, and then to the capital provider. So, like I mentioned, the capital provider holds enforcement rights to pursue remedies of default, and the municipality is not involved in that process. And then the next slide, slide 14, it's 51 cities or towns. These are the cities or towns that have opted in so far. And I just want to pause real quickly. Typically what we get for questions from cities or towns, they're asking, like, what is the bandwidth for my staff? The tax collector, the treasurer, how much are we looking for increase in work? And typically the pipeline, like I mentioned, we've only done 2 deals so far. And so while we're totally supportive of this program, we also understand that there might not be that significant of a pipeline for each city or town, depending on what they make up, how many commercial buildings they may have, how many of the commercial property owners are looking to kind of, energy improvements. And so, we don't necessarily think there's gonna be a huge bandwidth issue based on pipeline for cities and towns. That said, we understand, that it does mean that you have to update, your betterment, your tax bills to include it for the property owner if it does pass. The good thing about that is that there's a lot of, so if you folks opt in to the PACE program, you don't have to update your tax software right away. Even if you do a PACE financing and they close on it, the tax software doesn't have to be updated right away. You have a lot of runway to do so, because the tax, the first principal and interest payment is usually a year or 2 off once they do these deals. So there's time for the tax software to be updated. And like I said, we're providing resources to cities and towns to help them do that.
Rob, quick question.
Yeah.
On this page, doesn't seem like there's a lot of central mass towns. Is there a reason? Like, just no specific reason? Or?
No, there's not really any reason. We've been talking to a lot of cities and towns lately. At least there's been like 10 cities and towns like the last week I've spoken to, either over the Zoom or in the meetings, and it's definitely been much more kind of like it hasn't been specific to one area. Multiple cities and towns have been talking about it. It has been challenging, I think, for municipalities to opt in unless they have a project pushing for it. And so, we get brought into cities and towns asking us to provide, from staff, to provide the Board of Selectmen with an overview of this. And, unless there's a property owner that's looking to do this program, it's a nice to have, it's not a must to have. And so that kind of falls to the side. And that's why we've only seen like 51 communities so far out of 351.
I'm just surprised, like, Worcester's not even on this list.
Yeah. We're in the process of talking to Worcester as well.
Okay.
So, yep.
All right, sorry.
Yep, no, thank you for that question. And one final thing, this does not require a town meeting vote. It can be adopted by a Board of Selectmen vote. So that typically makes people a little relieved. And that is it. I'm open to any questions you folks may have about the program.
Board members, questions on the program?
Oh yeah, Mr. Chair, just
Mr. Sullivan.
what Rob's last statement, I don't want the board to be accused of being like uncooperative, not asking other boards for their opinion or anything. Sounds like to me it's a pretty good program to be involved in. see any, I mean, treasurer's here, but I don't see any drawbacks.
The plan is here too as well, Mr. Chairman.
I'm talking about financial wise, right? I see no drawback if we're not gonna have to go to court and enforce liens. I mean, that'd be the biggest question, but clearly does not fall on the municipality.
No, the liens do not, you know, it's like I said, it's like a private mortgage, you know, in essence, the way you would, Cedar Town would address, you know, its property owner with private mortgage.
Just don't wanna be accused of being uncooperative.
No, property tax comes before this, so
We get us.
I don't see how this is bad. I'm looking for something that could be, and I don't see it.
It was interesting, I saw on, like, the types of buildings that's been worked on, and I figured, especially with some of the things that we know that we need to do around here, is like, you know, education is the lowest amount. And, you know, I think that if you went and talked to the school, they would say, oh, you know, we need help with that.
Yep.
FAA, guys, any questions? Oh.
I have no questions. You got a question? Yeah, I got just a couple questions. You said the lenders are involved in this, that lend the money for the project?
Yeah, so in essence, there are 11 capital providers that have Mass Development have approved. And when I say approved, it's in essence, we're making sure that they're licensed to do business in Massachusetts. You know, they're adhering to anti-money laundering rules. You know, the litmus test of like they're above board in essence. And they're firms that operate throughout the United States. We have one bank, Bank of America. The 10 other firms are kind of, you know, there's a firm called Greenworks that has done these two projects. They're based in Rhode Island. That said, if you have a property owner in your community who has an existing relationship with a bank, that bank can be the lender under the PACE program. And they just have to kind of fill out one page, you know, request for information just to make sure that they check the box to participate in the program.
What are some of the average interest rates?
So yeah, given this interest rate market environment, things are changing, right?
Right.
But the two deals that we did, and that was a number a few months ago. The Greenfield one I think got 5.9%, and the Boston one got 6%, around 6%. Obviously, that depends on the credit of the entity and the company, and also the bank that they're working with. But those are the two deals that we saw. And I would just add, you know, this is a program that is like a tool in the toolbox for the property owners. You know, they can go to we ask them to go to Mass Save or any other provider and find out as many, you know, free money, incentives, grants that they can before they do the financing. And if they can find better terms outside of that with the regular bank, then, you know, they don't have to pursue the PACE program. It's entirely up to them. This is just, like I mentioned, one more tool in the toolbox to help them out.
So our collector then becomes kind of a added job as far as collecting this assessment, and then he's gonna send it.
Yep, it gets remitted to Mass Development. And so in essence, it's another line item on the tax bill.
Yep.
And that's what MuniCap is supposed to help them out with, because there's all different tax softwares that city and towns use differently. You know, there's a host of them out there, I guess. And so they're familiar with all the tax software, and they can help them kind of automate that.
Okay.
And it's a set schedule, so it's if they use 5 or 10 year or 20-year amortization schedule, once the closing happens, it's a set schedule, so you know exactly what those payments are gonna be each year. And then, so that can just automatically kind of get automated into the system depending on the system that folks have. You know, if your municipality opts in and we have a property owner that is interested in it, Mass Development's role is really to help out the municipality, and to kind of, you know, onboard them into doing this. And so we'll send them out kind of a questionnaire about like, what kind of software do you use? And then we kind of give them a list of like, all right, you know, these are the steps that we see. But, you know, for the Greenfield and the city of Boston, once they looked at it, they had a comfort level that wasn't that huge of an uptaking. But that said, every city and town is different, and we're more than willing to talk to staff. If they're interested in learning more about the program, exactly what it entails, we're more than, you know, to take things offline and speak with them if they want.
If any of these properties you mentioned were second from the real estate taxes first and then the assessment second?
Yes.
If we go into tax lien on a property, what is the time frame that's continue paying the assessment?
You know, so tax lien's gonna, you know, is probably gonna happen after. So the one thing about the PACE program is the only thing that's in default is the unpaid, billed and uncollected amounts. It's not the full balance of the loan. And so that's another thing that business owners really like. It's non-accelerating debt. So if you have a $5 million loan with a bank and you miss 2 payments, they can't come and try to collect all $5 million. The only thing's in default is the unpaid amount. So typically what will happen in these is that the bank, if they're in default with the PACE amount, they're usually engaging that property owner and trying to recoup it. And so they're already doing the work almost on behalf of the municipality, because the municipality has to get paid first for the property taxes, right? And so that property owner, the capital provider is now talking to that property owner saying, hey, you have to come, you have to pay. And they're subordinated to the property tax. And so the first people who are gonna get paid is the city or town, right? And so in essence, the capital provider is acting kind of as a collector on behalf of the city or town well before a tax lien will happen, because I think those take over a year, right, to kind of, yeah, so they take a long time. And so typically the capital provider is already talking to people in advance of that, trying to get them to come to make the payment and stay current.
So we would have to let the lender know that we're in the
No.
arrears?
No, so you have no responsibility. If they are not current with their property taxes, they're automatically, they're not gonna be current with their PACE payment, right? Because we're subordinated to them. And so you have no responsibility to notify us if they're not current with their property taxes, so.
I guess I got one more question, John. You mentioned this doesn't require town meeting. One of the properties you mentioned was the Stevens Linden Mill. We currently have a TIF program with them. Can this assessment be added to the TIF program without town meeting? Is that,
Yeah, so that it's
legal?
It's a different.
Huh?
go ahead.
No, you know.
Yeah, so it's entirely kind of like a separate program, and so, you can use this PACE assessment with a number of different kind of state programs. Yep.
So just to be clear, like, there's no public money, that would be used to
No
fund
public
this.
money.
Okay. One second. Mr. Treasurer Collector, do you have anything?
A few items. So right now, any betterments and liens go in the third quarter. But the fourth quarter is due on May 1st, and it isn't until maybe middle of May we start sending out our demand bills. So it doesn't take a year, it would be 2 or 3 months to the end. So the first question is, cash flow wise, if the municipality is required to make a payment, reimbursing the capital bank for a payment that hadn't been made. So you understand what I'm going for. There's a $25,000 betterment on the third quarter, which is due February 1st, and the presumption is 30, 60 days later, the bank is gonna look for a check from my office forwarding the betterment that had been paid, correct?
So the capital provider, the way the legislation's written is that you're not in essence gonna front us any money. When they close on that, the financing, they're gonna make sure the schedule lines up where the funding is provided by that property owner and is held by Mass Development and then paid by the capital provider. So there's not gonna be kind of like a staggered amount where all of a sudden, like, the bills aren't working out and you folks have to kind of front a PACE assessment.
Right.
That make sense?
It does. I can get into the weeds here for an hour. We
Yeah.
have a big audience.
Yeah.
But, in essence, it's a third quarter lien or a third and fourth quarter lien, because your two preliminaries don't get anything against it. This would be a sewer betterment or one of the proposed street betterments. The assessor has, a basic amortization schedule, goes through and apportions everybody's bill, and the whole idea is in year one, you're taking the money in, there's 20 people on the street, 1/20th comes in by each taxpayer, and then you're making that debt payment. Making the debt payment would be similarly paying off the capital, correct?
Yeah, so I think the one difference with this than a regular assessment is that this is just one property owner that you're billing.
Right. Okay. And as far as the priorities of liens, did you want to go over, I think it's the second half of 13, the betterments and assessments? It was my understanding all betterments, and I can't quote think it's chapter 60. When collecting taxes, the last thing that's collected is the real estate tax. And that's the basis for perfecting a tax title lien. So usually, interest and whatever betterment is on there, and then the real estate property, real estate taxes are paid, and that's the basis for perfecting the lien.
Yep.
Here it sounds a little different in that, it sounds like the finance company is making sure that the real estate is paid, as a priority for them, not necessarily a priority for my office in collecting the bill.
I think I think the bottom line is they're not gonna get paid their assessment until your office has paid the property tax.
Okay, I think I understand that. All right.
Yeah, so if we phrase it like it was not clear in the PowerPoint.
No,
but
that's okay.
I can assure you, they are not getting paid until you are paid.
Right. And as far as passing the lien, doesn't necessarily need to get settled at the, in the event there's a sale. But more times than not, every attorney raises their hand and looks for a betterment paid in advance. Is there a plan for something like that, or would that be something taken up with the bank and the property owner when they were looking to settle?
So in essence, first, there's no prepayment penalty if the property owner wants to fully pay the assessment off. But any transition from one property owner to the next property owner, that is a discussion between the capital provider and the property owners. And it's something the property owner has to disclose when they're trying to sell the building.
Okay.
They have to. I mean, it's required under this statute. So, yeah, I'm sure under other statutes too. But yeah, they have to tell them. They have to know that potential buyer that there's assessment on the property.
Okay, thank you. All right, so how does that figure into Stevens Mill? That's the second half of this question.
So I think first, for Stevens Mill, the owners have at least assembled a preliminary list of costs that would fall under this type of programming. But really the planning has been on hold, knowing that the town needs to authorize it first. And so then, if and when the town authorizes it, then basically what the owners will do is revisit that list, and pretty significant list. I mean, they want to take advantage of this great program, and fund all manner of measures to make the building more sustainable, which is a good thing. But so really for them, it's assembling that list, figuring out which costs will fall under the energy saving measures, and really it will become one of the biggest participants in the program. Yep. Which is of course a new program, so that's maybe why. But I think it would be a great story for mass development and for certainly for the project. So then they'll need to find a lender and set up a relationship with a lender, and they may have some ideas about that. I'm not exactly sure. But Rob was telling me earlier that they can help, make an introduction to a lender. So that's nice. And then it's really submitting an application to mass development, if I'm not wrong.
Yep.
You guys will review it, make sure that, I think the big point there is you want to make sure that the savings from the energy measures are greater than the cost, right?
We want to make sure that point, and also from the financial side, that the property owner's in good standing with the town, city or town. And,
Right.
so there's the energy side of things and also the financial side, but mostly what you just mentioned, Luke.
Yep.
Yep.
And then you, as well as DOER, will review the application, and there you go.
Yep.
I think that's the next steps for the project.
Thanks, Mr. Sullivan.
I think he finished up what I was gonna say, so essentially, like you said, you folks compile your list, you guys get it together, it goes to you guys, it's either approved or disapproved, and all we have to do is opt into the program. Like, we won't review their list of upgrades or energy saving measures. You won't come back to us and say, we approved 8 out of 10, it would be between you and them, and we're just.
In essence, you're authorizing kind of outside capital funds to go to one of your property owners to pay for energy improvements. And the reason you folks are opting is just because it's getting repaid by
somebody else.
On the property tax bill, is the mechanism of how it's getting paid back.
And again, similar to when we put the district in, not that the property has to be in that district, but this program will open it up to other projects, maybe not as big as yours.
Yeah.
Like you said, a 12,000 square foot building, I mean, I can look around town and see a bunch of those. So this program would allow other folks, smaller scale, to do the same.
Yep, exactly, and if they're not interested in pursuing it, then they won't pursue it.
Right,
They'll find
application's free, like,
Yeah.
they go to you guys, if they can't make it work, they say, I'm pulling it,
Yes.
nice to meet you.
So we receive an application from a property owner, usually with a project manager like Luke, and we take an initial look at, there's a fee, like a few $100 fee, but we don't actually charge the fee until we know it's gonna move forward. You know, we're not gonna get an application and be like, this doesn't work, but thank you for the fee. We look at it, and then we kind of talk to DOER, and if there's things that need to be changed in the application, then we just provide feedback to the property owner.
Oh, just you guys, we're out of the loop.
Yes.
Okay, that's why I want to be clear, there's no extra burden
No.
on the town planner, for
Right,
example.
right. So, I guess my last question would be, have there been municipalities who have opted out of this, and if they have, why?
No, there hasn't been
And
any
yet-
that was opted out.
So once they're in, they're in.
Yep.
Like, anybody, you wouldn't go anywhere and then the board get a thumbs down? I'm just curious, like, why?
So we've gone to places with the board, and they haven't given it just a thumbs down, but they said, we want to talk to staff and see what the bandwidth
Okay.
issue is with,
Alright.
you know, and what does the process look like. But we haven't had anyone's, you know, they've tabled it, but they haven't
Okay,
said no to it.
all right, that's good. Anybody else? Any other comments? Jay?
Just to confirm with Rich that the software that we're probably going to is compatible with this program.
We can do it with the software we have now.
Thank you.
All right, there's nothing else, then we'll go to, the other item is the Board of Selectmen will vote to adopt the program for Dudley or take any other action relative thereto, and I was just handed this as the, motion that, if someone so chooses to do that, so. What's the board's pleasure?
Make a motion, let Mr. Johnson read the motion.
I think the clerk reads the motions.
Yes, actually.
Clerk can't see.
We had to adopt that, Mr. Chairman, on the fly here tonight, so.
Mr. Chair, make a motion that, Mr. Chair, make a motion that we
That's
accept,
fantastic.
Dudley's participation in the PACE program, and I'll read the entire motion upon a second.
Motion by Mr. Sullivan,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Sigenovich.
That makes sense, that motion?
Any further move?
Further move to read the entire. The town of Dudley, with the approval of the selectmen of the town of Dudley, hereby approves the municipality participating in the PACE, Massachusetts pursuant to the PACE Act, and authorizes the town administrator to enter into a PACE pursuant to which the municipality will agree to, 1, levy PACE betterment assessments, impose PACE betterment assessment liens on benefited properties located in the municipality in the amounts determined by Mass Development to be sufficient to repay the PACE financing. 2, assign the PACE betterment assessment liens to Mass Development, which Mass Development may in turn assign to the providers of the PACE financing, each as a capital provider, in parentheses, as collateral for such PACE financing. 3, include on property tax bills for the benefited property the installment payments necessary to repay the PACE betterment assessments in the amounts and at the times determined by Mass Development. 4, collect and pay over to Mass Development or its designee required by the agreement PACE betterment assessment and liens. The agreements to be substantially in the form presented to this meeting with such changes, modifications, and insertions as the town administrator and other city town agency as may be designated in the agreement is authorized to levy such PACE on Dudley assessments and impose the PACE betterment assessment liens on behalf of the city and town without further authorization by this legislative body. Notwithstanding any other provision of law to the contrary, officers and officials of the municipality, including without limitation, municipal tax assessors, tax collectors, are not personally liable to Mass Development or to any other person for claims of whatever kind of nature under or related to PACE, Massachusetts, including without limitation, claims for or related to uncollected PACE betterment assessments other than fulfillment of the obligations specified in the agreement the municipality has no liability to the owner of the benefited property or to any other capital provider related to the municipality's participation in the PACE, Massachusetts. And I so move.
Motion by Mr. Sullivan.
May I see before I affirm a second?
I was always taught to read everything. I'm the guy who reads, well, I don't read the ample disclosure, but you get the point.
Make sure Michelle gets a copy of that, huh?
I think so.
Instead of watching it on the replay.
Yeah.
Second.
Okay, it's okay with the seconder, seconded by Mr. Sigenovich. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous, 4-0. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Very, very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you.
Luke, good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you.
too.
Yeah.
Sure.
Looking forward to moving that along.
Yep.
All right, item 3, fiscal year 23 departmental budget hearings, brought back by popular demand. So in this session, this is why we're here at the FAA, and to talk about each department's funding needs and take questions from the committees and boards and any public that wants to comment. So we will start with the town clerk. Larry, going up.
Mr. Chairman, we had a.
Mr. Ruda.
We of course had an audio-visual display set for tonight, and it would have been fabulous.
That would have been fantastic. Instead, we have these fancy sheets.
But instead, we have these sheets. So as the department heads talk about their budget requests and needs over the course of the next 2 meetings, I'll draw the FAA and the Board of Selectmen's attention to the column all the way to the right that says ARPA. As the board knows, we had a certain amount of revenue loss that we were eligible to receive ARPA funds for. And next to those line items, where it looks like I may have recommended a cut to that line item, it's actually my recommendation to apply where it says ARPA, that amount to that department's budget using available ARPA funds to do so.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ruda.
And Mr. Chair,
Mr. Sullivan?
I had a chance to sit down, Mr. Ruda. Those are all qualified, accepted uses.
Good,
We're not,
good. Good to know.
that's what it was set for.
Excellent. Laurie? Hi.
Good evening. How would you like me to do this? You want me to go over each line item and,
No, I mean, we can read it.
Okay.
But if there's anything you want to call out, or things that are new and are additional, that would be fantastic.
okay, so, as far as elections, you notice that if you look from 2021, which is a similar year, it had 3 elections as we do this year. It went up substantially. The reason for that is the legislature is still voting on the changes that they're gonna have for the elections, whether they're gonna have the mail-in ballots, which I'm pretty confident they are. The early voting, they are gonna have some, but they have not determined how long it's gonna be. Last year for the state ones, it was 2 full weeks, including Saturday and Sundays. I expect that to happen again. The vote by mail substantially increases our budget because it's a lot more work to get the ballots out, process them, so that's why that went up so much. Also, another change this year is we're gonna be going to 4 precincts instead of 3. That didn't have a huge impact on it because we have already purchased the equipment for it, so it's gonna be on staffing. I have a few plans in place that I can try to reduce the staffing on that, so it's not gonna make it that much different. The other line item is the assistant town clerk salary. I used to have her for 30 hours a week, and then she had hours that she worked in the accounting department. She's no longer doing that, so I'm gonna have her full-time in our office. So while it looks like an increase, it's not. It's the same hourly rate at this point until they decide what is being done for raises this year. One question I do have, I think for John, on this one is the account preservation. No, I don't have to put in an article for that, right, for the 5,000 for that?
The actual archival presentation, preservation appears in the, you're talking about to receive the matching funds that we generally get donated? from?
Right, and what we put in towards our share of it.
So if you look in the selectmen's budget, that was moved last year to the selectmen's budget,
Oh, okay.
archival.
So I'm
and
fine
it's-
like
and
this then.
it's funded at 5,000.
Okay, perfect. And I think that was those were the only things that I thought you might have questions on, but if any questions, just let me know.
Thank you, Laurie.
Mhm.
Board members, FAA, any questions for Laurie?
Anybody?
No?
Okay, all right, thanks, Laurie.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Larry.
All right, next up, the treasurer collector, item 3B.
Mr. Chairman, sit here or up at the podium?
Yeah, whoever you like, you can hear, you can sit there.
So we'll start from the top. Accounts 5111, going down to the 5124 are salaries. The first two don't change. The 5121, 5123, assistant treasurer, assistant collector, this is just bringing them up to what they currently make right now. Again, like the town clerk had mentioned, the evaluations, everybody needs to clear those hurdles, do a good job, provide more each year, and then the raises would be set out appropriately. Data processing is just that, it's the computer cost for the software being used. Mr. Chairman? Did you have a question?
Nope, not
My
yet, no.
apologies. I can go fast, I can go slow.
Nope.
Next item up is postage. Bit of an increase there, but this is based on sort of a blend between actual of 21 and projected 22 usage. Remember, if you got a 50-cent stamp and it goes up 2 cents, that's a 4% increase. Quickly, longevity, I will hit 20 years this year. As far as tax title goes, 15,000. Again, we get some double usage out of the tax title. It's originally drawn out of the budgeted line item. When it comes in as a repayment of a tax lien, it goes into the revolving fund. So the money that went to pay an attorney week 1 of the year, we get a chance to use it a little bit later in the year as well. Expenses, nothing seems to go down. Unemployment, $5,000. If you remember, 2 years ago, we were well up into the 80,000. No one can predict the next pandemic or what's going to happen. There's a substantial amount of money right now in the unemployment expense account. It's a trust account. We hold it, we keep the interest on there. We're just looking to add to it each year. And if I could go out of order, same thing with the OPEB trust. We're looking to put money there each year and to have the interest start to earn the interest and to get a bigger position. The county retirement, again, is an assessment. Remember, we're looking to be funded by 2036 at a 7.6% funding ratio. And as much as some quarters, the stock market really, it's singing. There were some quarters there that they were brilliant, double-digit increases and what have you. The way the actuaries are viewing all of the gains, they are smoothing them. So they're only booking the rate of funding and taking a gain only as an offset of a loss in a future quarter. We're not looking to reduce things. Again, we've gone through, we have our assessment into four pieces. There's the general fund piece, of course. There's a water piece, there's a sewer piece, but there's also a water sewer piece that gets broken out. Everybody with membership there, current or retired, has an actuarial valuation on them. So we've gone through and we've assigned who would be your enterprise people, who would sit in both enterprise funds for funding purposes, and then we'd have the general fund. Everybody knows we go through, and instead of making two payments, we make one payment on July 1st and save the 7.6% rate for the second payment. So we're getting this out as cheap as we possibly can. Just as a side note, we sent it as a wire last year, so you know we've left the 80s on a lot of these things, so it's a good thing. Group insurances, this is our health insurance. This is driven by the pricing at the Hampshire Council of Governments Insurance Trust. So the Medicare is a calendar year, and for the calendar year of 2022, it was a 0 increase, which means the trust is going to lose 1% or 2% on that. It's a planned loss because we're overfunded. I shouldn't say that, but you're supposed to have anywhere between a 3 and 4 month run out. We're beyond 4 months, so the idea is you're gonna go, instead of giving a premium holiday or making a deduction, we're just keeping things equal because we don't want to start moving all of the rates too high, too low. The idea that we'll go through, we'll eat the 1 or 2% year one. Same thing, the renewal for this year is planned to be a 0 for the HMO Blue and the rest of them. So that is good. Keeping up with the Joneses. If anything, we're doing very well. Again, the executive committee, and I sit on the executive committee, is sort of conservative. So if it takes an extra year or two to run out what they are overfunded, it's a little bit better than the back and forth of reducing a rate to a -3% and then back up to what would be a 5 or a 6 for the next year. Group insurance, Medicare tax, again, a little bit of an increase on there, but remember, the amount of people that we have who have been hired prior to 1986 and not Medicare eligible are next to nothing. So essentially it was last year's payroll times 0.145, and that's what it's going to be. Your insurance general, we do not have a renewal. We've got our fingers crossed. We have the Maya program. We're participating in as many of those loss programs as we can. In this case, an early renewal is not going to be better. We want to get another month or two of lower losses, and this is, you get another month or two going through all of your loss control webinars. I was on one last week and was on one the week before. Again, cybersecurity is a big thing. We have a big incentive on that, and it's due on March 25th. So these are one of the things we expect a dollar for dollar renewal, if not a decrease. Maturing debt interest. If you're going to notice one thing on there, the debt went down. Your ambulance was paid off in 1 year. It made sense to do that, given that you had the space on the DE1 and it was a debt excluded item. So the idea was a sizable piece had already come off. I filled it with the $260,000 and we paid it off. So this year, when you go through and you calculate your tax rate, you're going to have even less on the DE1, which means your tax rate is going to creep down. That's a different discussion for another day. Webster Dudley intermunicipal agreement is a pass-through cost. We go through and we get Mr. Bell, who's the accountant over in Webster, goes through and apportions the 17% of the debt for the sewer department. We put that on the tax rate, and that gets paid. Webster dispatch assessment, I see it's been pulled out to the ARPA. Again, that was a pass-through. That was Southern Worcester County, the dispatchers, and that's an assigned cost, and it's sat in my budget because that's just a good place to go through and put it. And again, the OPEB trust, $10,000, modest amount that's going in there, but we're making some inroads for it. Is there a question of detail on anything in particular? Of course.
So Rich, is Charlton part of the Hampshire Trust?
Yes, they are, as is Bay Path.
Okay, because, a couple questions, but the schools we had a meeting the other night, made mention of they wanted to join as an entity and they were told they can't. Is that because they're a regional school district? Is there a reason?
No, there was a vote by the body, it would be the Insurance Advisory Committee, to freeze enrollments for 12-month period, 18-month period.
So it can be revisited?
It can be revisited. The whole idea was, earlier in the process, you would go through and petition. They would go through, they'd do the valuations, they would figure out based on population, utilization, essentially they'd crunch the numbers, and you'd want to bring in people who were advantageous to the group. Conversely, anybody who's shopping for better health insurance rates doesn't have the best utilization or what have you. So the idea, we had an opportunity where we investigated things and went with the Hampshire Council of Governments Insurance Trust on a period when we didn't need to, which I think made all the difference in the world. We didn't need to do it. They almost needed us more than we needed them, but it's really not like that. It's a very solid group. And it's not really an individual decision. It's the trust.
Okay, no,
It's the entity.
So then I have another question. You talked about the unemployment self-insurance trust. You said you're carrying I don't know if you said substantial balance. There is a balance.
There's a balance in the trust. Each year, we have a budgeted line item, like this $5,000 will be added to the trust. So over in the bank, the unemployment account has $5,000 on it, and the whole idea is you're saving for the future. There could be, like COVID hit, there were some layoffs, and they went through and they paid X amount of people for X amount of weeks off. There is a non-budgetary funding mechanism to go through and pay it. There's also one for the Municipal Insurance Trust and workers' comp.
So my question was gonna be, and I trust your judgment, if you come to the end of the fiscal year and you have funds that you may deem excessive in that account, could you transfer it to the OPEB? Because I know that's always one we're trying to build up. Like if there was, would it be something that's even allowed? Like once it's in that unemployment trust, does it have to stay there? I guess what I'm getting at, if you deemed like you had a sufficient amount that you could move some.
Right,
We're always talking about OPEB. I know we're always,
right.
you have to add to it. It's a fact of life.
The idea that you passed the budget, I make the transfer on July 2nd. I put the $10,000 into the OPEB trust, and I put the $5,000 into the unemployment trust, as opposed to doing it at the end of the year.
I'm saying if you had a balance, instead of carrying that balance, would it make more sense
Right.
to move some of it, move a little, move a percent?
I think that's one of the reasons that it's been in there, because as much as we're just putting a modest amount in, I agree with you. It's, at the end of the year, the last week in June, you're not having any substantial unemployment costs to move it over. I think we can reformat a budget if it were the Board of Selectmen's pleasure to go through and do it at the end of the year. But like the stabilization money, any money, you want to get it in there right away so that your interest is earning more interest on it. But it's absolutely a possibility.
All right, thanks.
Carrie, anything for Rich?
No.
Jay? Mike?
Yeah, Rich, the maturing debt went down 260.
Yep,
What, you mentioned something about the ambulance?
the ambulance.
So was that the payoff of the ambulance payment?
Yep, 260 was the payoff for the ambulance, so it's
So we
been,
didn't finance that, we just paid it in one shot, is that what you're
we,
saying?
we borrowed it for a year.
Okay. Now, what about, I thought we had the last payment on the building here. Is that
That would be,
four, or is that?
that would be 23,
Next year.
and I can dig into the stack.
No, you don't have to dig it, but that's,
No, no, no.
that's part of your,
Uh,
your maturing debt includes the last payment on that?
Yep,
That's why it's going down. And while you're looking, Rich, that goes back to the argument we always have about replacing debt. Try to keep it stable tax rate, stable payments,
right.
carry a certain
So-
amount.
If we go back to here, we have 12/15/2022, the last payment gets made for the $5.77 million bond. And then we would have a similar payment, 97/256. Again, we'd be retiring the debt in December of 2022. So real quickly, $350,000, $400,000 is coming off the tax rate next year.
It's next year.
Okay.
Excuse me, 2023, so in '24, that's where we'll have the void.
All right, because I thought.
shouldn't say a void,
I thought it was
but-
coming off, I thought that was, the last payment was in the 2022 budget.
No,
Okay.
no, this,
What else is gonna be dropping off of that account in '23?
Count, yeah.
for '23, Mr. Chairman, quickly, we have a 2023 gross debt schedule. I'll read it off quickly. We have a Bay Path assessment for 158,409, Dudley Charlton Field renovation, 50,417. We're still early in those two debts. The 97,256, 291, 591 are the last two payments in 2023 for this building. We have the Webster Intermunicipal Agreement for 54,259. And that's gonna go on. It's a modest dollar amount. $50,000 doesn't significantly change things. Your fire station, this year, 2022, was 1183. In 2023, it goes down to 1140. So your fire station is going to run out to 2036. But town hall is gonna be are the two big ones that are gonna come off, just about 400,000.
Okay.
And again, that would be a background against the 260 that's coming off going into 2023. And then if you go all the way back to 2019, 577,000 was the sewer line, the last payment, betterment and assessment, not necessarily for the school, but it was the debt excluded portion of the sewer betterment up to Dudley, up to Shepherd Hill. So 577 came off in 2019. So, one item is, 577 is a decent amount. 260,000 is a decent amount. And I guess my best analogy would be, you wanna buy a 3-year-old, you wanna buy a 2023 car with 2017 prices, the whole idea.
Okay.
Makes the most sense.
Anybody have anything else for Rich?
Rich, the group insurance, $20,000 increase in that, what is? It's quite a jump.
Two things. Your retirees are alive and well. The idea that in the marketplace, you're going through, and anybody who has spousal coverage, Fallon is going away. And in anticipation of that, I know there's at least gonna be 2 people migrating in. Also, I just talked about a 0% increase, so if it's a chance between you and your significant other getting the coverage, you're comparing the best deal. And it's the expected migration there. In addition to, we've just had a bunch of retirements in the last couple of years. I also anticipate 1 or 2 additional retirements, and they don't disappear from the insurance. We just add another person on.
Okay.
Thank you, Rich.
Thank you.
Did you get it?
I just wanted to ask John about the
Okay.
opera, you can use the opera funds for the dispatch, that's fine.
Yeah, essentially, the ARPA funds, because we were able to declare revenue loss, is eligible for everything, just about every form of revenue replacement, except things like OPEB. Those that it disqualifies for that, pension plans, that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you, Rich. All right, next up, we have the police department. Chief Marino. Whatever you'd like, sir. Yep.
Just rather than talking through a bunch of facts.
Yeah, just pull the microphone down toward you. Thank you.
Good evening, can you hear me good? All right, good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you, going through the police budget right at this point, one of the big things to consider is that the police contract expires on June 30th. So most of the salary line items you'll see in here have been level funded with the current year. So that's why those numbers will change at some point up the line once everything is settled and determined. So a couple things of note. If you look at, my salary has a 3% increase by contract. The actual number isn't 115, it's actually 118, 103. That was what the current year's number is. So that's why the 121 goes on with that. So just in case you saw that big jump between the 115 and 121, that was there's just a misprint with that thing. But again, all those, you'll see the breakdown. We broke down a sergeant's salaries into 3 different columns. This is in anticipation of going to an online payroll system so that we can have these things broken down individually. We're still working on how to do that with the patrolman salary piece because there's so many of those folks, and depending on how many line items we're gonna try to create. So we're still trying to work out how that's gonna happen. Most of the other ones stay pretty consistent. You'll see an increase when you get down to Quinn-Bill. That's our educational incentive. So we have a combination of officers that receive a percentage of their pay as an education incentive. We also have officers that receive a flat rate. So I had 3 officers complete their master's degree this past year, and I believe I have one other officer that's coming on board with a degree. So that's why you'll see that increase in there of about $13,000 that bumps that line item up to where it's at there. We also added an additional patrol officer this year. So as you may be aware, you'll see the lieutenant's line item moved up. It's at $38,000 now, which was basically like a half a year's salary. So we put in the 88,628 figure, because that position's been reactivated now for the first time in probably about 16 years. So I thank the board for the support on that, and Lieutenant Kolowitz is actually here because we've been going through the budget piece. So we added that position in there, and in turn we added an additional patrol officer, and we promoted a senior patrolman up to sergeant. So there's some moving parts in the line item there as far as the salaries go. We'll have a sergeant that's being paid a little less than some of the people in there. We have a patrol officer that's gonna be paid significantly less than the top patrol officer that was in there. And then, so as we balance them out amongst the 3 positions, it's really about an average impact on a budget of about $80,000 overall, once all 3 positions kind of work their way through. We also get too, is with some of the newer officers that we have hired in position, they move up in steps. So in addition to whatever the cost of living adjustment or whatever the adjustments that are made, but contractually, some will be moving up to different steps. And there's some significant jumps between some of the steps depending on where they are. So I have several of those officers that were now in their first 5 years that are seeing that type of movement. So you'll see some of that increase in there as that moves along. So let's see, I'm just trying to see what else might be something that's a glaring expense. Really, everything else kind of goes about the same. Again, we're all gonna kind of be dealing with the impact of fuel. We're not sure how that's gonna go. But we're using the Wex card program now, which seems to be working very well. So hopefully we can get that under control. In essence, that's about everything in a nutshell. What I have is, I think I've sent this off to the board, but I can get it all to the finance board too. I usually put together like a budget request explanation that breaks down all the line items. So it might answer some of the questions that you may have in there. And I'll just make sure that that's can be forwarded out to everybody again, so that you can see that as it goes through. But if you have any other questions, or is there anything else you want to go over, I'd be glad to do that.
Thank you, Chief. Stephen?
Chief, just off, maybe not off the top of your head, it wouldn't be fair. Can you provide us a breakdown at some point of who's, generic code, not names, exact, or more like eligible funds for Quinn, the eligible Dudley Educational Assessment? Because as those senior people transition out, everybody coming in joins that new program, right?
Yeah, it's a cap of everybody that was hired after, I believe, 2012. I think it's after January 1st of 2012 falls under the new program. So there's, I think at this point, let's see, there's 16 full-time officers. I think you have, I think it's probably 8 and 8 right now that go under that. So I think it's pretty much a half split, whereas before it was more or less like 3/4 were under it. So,
Could you just provide like a number, whatever the percent like from that total is, like 70% Quinn?
yeah, and if you've seen it, I think you've seen initially when some people had retired or some people left service, we had some significant drops in that account. It brought down. And so, again, as some people come into the job, a person leaves that was a Quinn bill 20% person versus a person that comes in at a stipend rate, you see a significant difference there. And now we're also seeing some blended ones too, because we have some people that qualify under the Quinn bill portion, but yet the degree they got now is not Quinn bill reimbursable. So they get a combination of the Quinn bill versus the stipend, like a merger in the mix. So there's some different things that we have in that. But
So if they were pre-212 and had a bachelor's, they still get the Quinn equivalent, and if they got a master's, they get the stipend and the bachelor's?
yes, it depends where if they went to a Quinn approved program and got their master's through them, the full percentage would qualify. But if they didn't get it through a Quinn approved program, it falls under the stipend portion of the contract.
Oh, so
Just for
oh,
the breakdown. Because what happened was, just probably for the benefit of the folks that maybe weren't there, is the state, in their infinite insanity, decided not to fund their portion of the Quinn bill. And so that program was always a percentage of your pay went towards your education incentive. Half was paid by the municipality, half was paid by the state. So the state said, well, we're not gonna pay our portion. So that left cities and towns in a conundrum, as far as you have this, you've been paying for a number of years, now the state's not gonna kick in their share. So what the agreement was done at that time was, we'll at least guarantee it to the people that were getting it. And anyone new coming on qualifies under a stipend program. However, we expanded the amount of degrees that you could get to qualify. So some people you could have a degree in psychology that would probably not qualify under the Quinn bill, but would qualify under the Education Incentive Program. So we allowed more degrees in there at a flat rate stipend versus the percentage-based costs.
So pre-2012 then had a bachelor's that gets a master's in 2022 falls under the Quinn percent payment, so it's not
If
like
it was by a Quinn bill approved program.
Right, so it's not the 20% for bachelor's and whatever, I forget what the stipend is for masters, it's actually what's the 25 for a master's, right?
Yeah, on the old program, it'd be 25, yes.
So that person would get the 25 today?
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
under union contract?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and the way that's based is because hopefully, if the state kicks in money for it again, we'd be eligible for reimbursement for getting that half back. So whatever degrees would qualify under that program, we would want to recoup those costs. If somebody got it and we decided to pay it, well, we'd be responsible for the full boat if we did that, if they ever enacted it, because the only ones that you can recoup funding for is the ones that are under approved programs.
Is that something the state's looking at, do we even know? Is like something the
It'd be
state's-
great. I mean, it's been one of those things that's floating out there, and so, with a lot of the reform measures and things that have been put in, and training requirements, there's a hope that, the state will kick in with some of their, some of the, at least the obligations that they had, if they're putting a lot of restrictions and things on training. That's another thing that we'll be looking at some point. I really don't have much change in the reserve account, but if you're looking at that, the way now that, under the reform measures, that officers are required to be trained, they're basically gonna have to have full-time training. So our process of hiring part-time officers and then hiring them up to full-time and sending them to training might be a thing of the past. So we're currently revamping how we're gonna do all that. Other things people don't think about is that, you have a reserve force and you could bring people in for the Veterans Day Parade or Little League Parade or whatever it is. When those positions go away, we're still gonna need the coverage to come in. It's quite an undertaking just for the Veterans Day Parade to have to shut down all the roads between the two towns. It's one of those things that you need people to do that stuff. So there's all those little costs that are going on municipalities now that whereas a lot is the great unknown. In fact, we have one of our officers that's completing what they call the bridge program. So all of our part-timers are gonna be required over the next 3 years to complete additional training. So they've been required to take 200 hours of additional training on top of their current levels, what they have. So they're doing, I believe it's 80 hours online, and then it's another 120 hours of driving, firearms, and defensive tactics that they have to complete to bring them up to what they call the full level. But we're responsible for that training. State's sponsoring the cost of it, but we have to pay the people to go. So that's something that's gonna be going over the next couple of years. So a lot of that training cost is still kind of up in the air.
Chief, Mike? Anything for the chief?
Well, I don't know if this is just for the chief. I guess this would be a question for all the departments, basically. The fuel expense.
I can answer that, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Rudo?
Go right ahead, take it away then.
So, page 2, FAA reserve. It's generally 15 grand. I'm asking for an additional 10, but I'm starting to second. I was gonna say, now after the weekend, I'm starting to second guess that 10 grand's gonna be enough. But that was what my thought was that, aside of the fact that we trust the department heads to manage their own fleets
Right.
and make sure that they cut down on waste.
Well,
It's hard to
I know it's hard to
land on a
predict.
number without tying up.
29,000 just in the police department last year, that's at $2.30 a gallon almost. You're talking 440, 450 right now?
For now.
You're talking double, so that could be another 30,000. You
Could be.
spread that out amongst the other departments and we got a problem.
Yeah, we use about 244 gallons a week, roughly. So that's the biggest thing is we're trying to work on, obviously cutting down on whatever we can use, but one of the big things is hoping to get fuel-efficient vehicles, hybrids whenever we can, or different things of that nature that help kind of offset the usage, but.
So you believe if we have a problem, FAA reserve? will come
That
to
would be
rescue?
my choice. If we start running into fuel shortage, I think that we convene the FAA and vote to move. It's an emergency expense.
We got enough in it.
I mean, because I
Hopefully this goes back
hesitate,
down to $2.50.
I hesitate to throw a lot of money in there and tie it up,
Right, no, I
because
get
we
it.
don't know how other things are gonna go too.
Alright.
But I agree with you, I'm not settling on that number. I think we're gonna have to take another look at
I
that.
can imagine. Okay, that's my only question.
Thanks, Mike. Mr. Landry, anything?
All set, sir.
Anybody on FAA got a question?
All right,
All right.
thank you, Steve.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you,
Sir.
very good. Next up, Fire Department, Dean.
Thank you. So if you look at my budget recommendations under the fire department lines, the top 13 lines are all contractual increases or salary increases, which were negotiated through contracts. Below that, all the expense lines were level funded from last year, so no increases pretty much through the middle third of my budget. It's all the same as last year. The education incentive increased slightly because of contractual agreements. And the only two things that were really an increase were, the cancer screenings and the lifeguards. The lifeguards were reduced to $1 last year. It didn't really affect my budget because of the COVID situation, so we didn't have lifeguards. And the cancer screenings we cut out last year, but I thought it was important to include those this year. Actually, the first year we did that, we sent 6 of my individuals through that program, and actually one had an early intervention cot, which probably saved an IOD and medical expenses on the town's end because it was caught early enough and was benign. So if it wasn't for that cancer screening, it could have blossomed into something more serious. So I feel the cancer screenings are important. Other than that, my budget's pretty straightforward. Again, we level funded all the expense lines through from last year, which I've done for the last 4 or 5 years, so, it was a total increase of just over 60,000 on my total budget over last year, which was minimal.
Thanks, Dean. You've level funded your gas.
Yep, I did.
You wanna take another look at that with Jonathan when?
Well, that was based on a memo that I put out to all department heads, asking
Oh, I
to do
know,
that.
but now that we're looking at it a couple weeks later.
Yeah, oh, no, we're absolutely
Okay.
gonna have to do that.
Mike's, Mike's on it. Carrie, Stephen,
Yeah,
Okay. Carrie?
cancer screenings is still $1. Do you plan on adding to that?
Oh, it's
It's in for 6.
6,000.
All the way to the right.
Where am I? Okay. See, that ARPA money is the smallest font possible, I apologize. But, no, I wanted to make sure you were, that sounds like.
And that was just something we've recently put in the last couple of years, because we have a, agreement with Harrington Hospital, so we send a certain amount of individuals every year, because obviously I can't send the whole department in 1 year's time.
Good. That's all I have.
Okay, Jay, Mike,
That is.
Mr. Landry?
No, sir.
Anybody got a question? No?
Thank you, Chief. Stephen, hold on.
Rich?
Not so much as for the fire chief. This came up at the meeting the other night with the schools. It was pointed out from the town side that our departments have really toed the line last couple of years, trying to hold non-contractual wages down as we're trying to get to a comfortable number with the Chapel School District. It was brought up more than once, and I just want to thank Mr. Ruda, department heads. Should have waited till Jeff spoke, but really toeing the lines on the expenses. It's
Great.
making a difference on our side of the budget.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Carniani, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chief. You do a good job of making those fire engines last. What line item is the one, is that your preventive maintenance?
No, maintenance agreements is for like, annual renewals.
Right.
Like, contractual stuff, like, for an example, the HVAC system in the station, we're gonna have an annual contract with
Your
them.
HVAC, all of your building items.
Yeah,
Which is the line item that takes,
it would be under fire expense account.
okay, and it's just generally in there, it's not broken out?
No, the only thing we broke out of the fire expense account, which started last year, was the clothing allowance, because it was rolled into the fire expense account, but the administrator thought it would be better if that was separate, which is fine. We did have an unusual amount of repairs this year because of the older trucks. So, again, the expense line was overspent this year. But I mean, there's no way to predict that.
No, the preventive maintenance, making a 1979 fire truck last 43 years, and you're doing it on a shoestring budget.
Well, they won't last 43, but if, to answer your question, we
It was
do.
hyperbole.
The pumps will.
We change the filters every year. As soon as July hits, August, September timeframe, Hickey Fleet comes out and does all the
Yep.
preventative maintenance. George does some of it we send out. The only other thing, did that answer your question?
Paying you a compliment, you're doing a
Thank
lot
you.
with a little, and you've demonstrated, there's gonna be a vehicle repurposed, in another fire station, so, it's not like they went off to the, the junkyard or something, so good job.
Thank you. The only other thing I forgot to mention, I believe it's item number, count number 5128. Firefighter paramedic Bain, as most of you know, he left in October for another department, and we hired another guy to replace him, and he started in February. So that line item actually went down because the new person starts at a couple steps less, so that was a little bit of a savings there.
Have to change the name on that.
Yeah, I just wanted to note the savings, because, I mean, obviously it'll go back up in a couple years, but it's a little bit of a, couple $1,000s I could take off.
Okay, good. Thank you, Dean.
Thanks.
Next up, Jeff, Highway Department.
Thanks. So basically, most of the positions are level funded, with the exception of one truck driver's position that was lost, and you'll see there's an increase there to restore a truck driver labor position. There was also a laborer's position that went away last year for transfer to another department. There's an there's an increase to the buildings and grounds coordinator's position, because that position was not filled. It was actually filled but with an assistant or a laborer, and that position is now going to be filled on a permanent basis. The tree removal account, you'll notice an increase there of about $8,200. The machinery maintenance, there's a $6,000 increase too. Line painting, there was nothing in the budget last year, and the request is a $10,000 item for line painting. And also an increase of $10,000 for small capital items, and a decrease to the road maintenance account. Then as well, the recycling center, that is a level funded budget.
Okay. Mr. Sullivan?
So just real quick, Jeff, the labor position's gone away because we intermingle the guys, right?
So the laborer's position went away. I had a laborer that actually transferred to water sewer.
Right.
So that was not backfilled.
Right, so we just use the guys, you use your staff to do everything. As we always say, it's not just a highway department, it's
Truck driver
everything.
laborer.
Yeah.
Correct. So I actually lost, and then there was a promotion to a equipment operator, so I lost one truck driver.
Right.
So
I saw
that position is being restored in the truck driver laborer's position. With the increase, there was both of those positions were not filled, and the truck driver's position was actually underfunded
Right.
last year. There was money that was transferred out of that, basically.
And then, Mr. Chair, that small capital line items, that's just for things you don't have to put out for bid, like if you have to go purchase something.
Correct.
That gives you flexibility, just go get it.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Barry?
Oh, nothing.
Okay. Mr. Mayon? Anything
Well,
further?
not really, just, the tree removal expense went up a bit. Is that, I don't remember seeing it much over 12 in prior years.
Yeah, so there's a fair amount of catch-up work that has to be done because of the lack of funding in the past.
Okay.
So it was funded at the 12.8 last year. I'm asking for the increase this year so that we can get caught up. There's a fair amount of tree trimming that has to be done and some dangerous trees that needed to be removed, so.
So, Mr. Chairman, it's interesting that Mr. Mayor brought that up, because what does it cost us a day? I would.
I think, yeah, the day rate. It was one of the bids that we put out for contract on an annual basis, and we realized an increase of about $1,200 on the day rate from the previous rate to the current rate.
Yeah, didn't we have an issue too, Mr. Administrator, Mr. Chair, if I may, not an issue, wrong word. There was something to do with the bid a year or two ago, where one was gonna be removal, one was maintenance, something to do how the bid went out, but now, did we like consolidate all that? Like, there's no separate, if one guy, we hired one company, he's gonna do it all, like, he's gonna do the maintenance
Correct.
that you can't do, and the removals that you have him do.
Correct.
There's not two companies, like, didn't we go?
No, there's not two companies. And then the other expense that's borne under there is if we're out on the roadway doing road work, if I have to have a tree company for a couple of days, we have a detail officer. Sometimes it requires 2 detail officers because of that, so that expense is borne under that.
Right, okay. I just remember there was
that
an issue a
account as
couple of
well.
years ago about one company, I forget.
So it doesn't get, you've, $12,000 gets us about
Trees?
3 days, 3 days worth
Four
of
trees.
Well,
tree work for a full day.
I'm glad to see that we're putting a little more in there, because.
Oh, we definitely need it.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's oftentimes a big demand, and then with the storm damage that we've had over the last year between
Oh,
the
yeah.
summer storms and then the winter, it's, doesn't go very far.
Sometimes, Mr. Chairman, it's proactive, but it also, like Jeff said, with the storms, it's a reactive hit to that line item, so.
I agree.
So, granted, it is a lot cheaper to go out and pick up a tree or pick up a limb off the road sometimes to, and then, oftentimes that's overtime, we're bringing somebody in to do that, but it's not the best way to handle it, and sometimes if we can
Yeah.
prevent any, type of property damage or anything, or risk to residents.
Got it. Thanks. Mr. Landry, anything?
Not at all, sir, thank you.
Okay, fine.
Anybody from FAA? I just reiterate what I already said, on fuel.
Fuel, yeah.
2,000.
Yep.
It's budgeted for.
Loud and clear.
Okay,
Thank you,
thanks.
Jeff. All right, and finally, water sewer, George.
Reinsurance.
Good afternoon. Okay, for water, which is the big one, I just want everybody to know, as I stated with capital improvement in FAA and last year, even though all these big projects are happening, we've kept the operations at a minimum. Our budget's as down as we possibly can. Fortunately, some of the issues with PFAS come into play where we're not sure yet where we're gonna end up with that. So just keep that in the back of your minds. If you could just go down the budget, just for the salaries, last year, the personnel were changed over to the state-required titles for licensure for treatment and distribution. So the salaries had gone up. We also have money in there for the contracts, and myself and the administrative assistant had some voted raises, so we had put in for that. Standby is always required. It's weekly. We've tried to keep that about the same, and so far we may be hitting our projections. Anything can change with emergencies. We just don't know what we're going to have from week to week. The overtime budget was increased a little bit because of the fact of the new treatment facilities for the PFAS coming online, SCADA systems, wells. Everything is subject to break-in time, alarming, things like that. So we anticipated that was going to happen. Nothing too much else. A little bit up on the electrical because of the new equipment now being put in and installed to run that TIG tank down there for the PFAS at Station 3, and then we'll be doing work to start up for the treatment facility. So we did raise up the electrical. Metering is a big thing with us, and we're trying to keep that meter reading equipment going and a constant flow of meters into both water and sewer with both budgets to
make sure we can go out and replace all the meters in town. Like I said, we're probably about half to 3/4 there right now, and we've been going nonstop right now. Longevity is basically myself in the future. So we had one on the sewer that hit the mark too. So I guess we're getting old. Reverse 911, we put in for 1,900, but I wonder if that's a little high. We're gonna have to look at that because I don't think the other departments are paying what we're paying, but it was something we wanted to check into. Chemicals, that's gonna stay as an increased amount, and even throughout the year, it's gonna stay an increased amount because of the fact of transportation and to make the chemicals, and especially in the bind that the rest of the world's in. That is gonna increase and probably keep increasing, so we have to stay on top of that. Right now, we're hitting our marks, but that's definitely gonna go up. Where it says GAC, that is the tank unit at Station 3. That's for media change, estimated media change, which is the material inside that tank that treats the water, soon-to-be treated water for the PFAS, which hasn't gone online yet, but when it does, we're anticipating that's what it's gonna cost us. Indirect costs is pretty straight with Rich. Operating expenses, education licenses is a must. It has to be renewed. We have money in for that. We are always doing education courses out in we have a place in Holliston and other areas. We go out and we get retrained and restart our licenses. Sampling is pretty straightforward. That doesn't really change too much. It's gone up a little bit, but not too much. That includes right now PFAS is a 20% increase for sampling, which is required once a month to do the PFAS testing, and it could require some more, especially with this unit to go online. They might ask us for some more treatment. Gasoline, which is one everybody's asking about. We're gonna keep it right there, and the reason I say that, we can always go back and visit in the fall, but right now I've got one vehicle, which is the economical truck, going out and doing all the servicing work, which is all the meter installs, people servicing the customers. Anything big goes to the big truck, and the other bigger trucks. And we've been lucky right now, and I probably just jinxed myself, that nothing's been too bad lately. So there's been a lot of inside work, inside the station's work, getting ready for the upcoming summer. But once the upcoming summer and warmer weather comes in, we will be out and doing some projects that have to be finished up, and or any projects that come up for emergency repairs or whatever. Leak detection was just something maybe people don't understand a little bit, but that was just a modest increase. We are required by the state to do a leak detection. We do it twice a year just to keep a track of leaks out there that we can't find, and we can fix them and keep the system buttoned up. Capital's way up, and that's of course due to the fact that we don't know what's going to end up happening. If we have a breakdown or something happens to a piece of equipment, it's not like fixing a flat tire. You're talking probably, it could be up to as much as $20,000 to make repairs. I mean, it's that kind of thing where we could end up with one troublesome pump and then another one hits and another one hits. It's just a crapshoot at that point. The debt service, will be coming off one debt for the Mill Street project, and then there'll be a gap, which we still have to see where we're gonna go with that. And then we're gonna be getting into the big debt for for all the SRF funding in the 2024 fiscal year. As of right now is what we're doing. So we're gonna make plans as far as we can try to cushion that blow a little bit and maybe add some to that for 2023. But we're gonna see how we do right now. There's still more fuels in the fire and more work to be done. Is anybody got any questions on the water side? One other thing, add on to, I'm sorry, the new hire that's under the operator, he just got his license for treatment, so he next gets his distribution. He's a operator laborer is his position. He also is shared with the sewer, so he's learning both realms, and that's what all these people eventually in positions are gonna do, is gonna combine in to do both operations, which they do basically now. But that was the understanding with the positions as they started, people move out, new people come in. It's gonna be a combined type of setup. because we need people on we need a group of people to take care of any emergencies or big projects. You can't just do it with what we have with 2 guys or 3 guys. It doesn't work like that. So having them on their side, come in and help us, vice versa, or if exchange for the day or whatever, is a common practice.
So George, you do that, Mr. Chair, you don't swap salary, like you don't bill the sewer guy to the water and the water guy to the sewer. They just get paid, right?
Yeah, that's correct, yeah. I mean, one goes to one just if he has to help them for
Right.
a couple hours or a day or whatever, and one will come, if one has a specific skill set and the other one doesn't, then we'll borrow that one to do that. So
Right.
it's yeah.
I've seen the sewer guys working on water breaks, for example.
Correct, yeah, they're always coming, they always get called in on everything, on any major job. Basically, sewer budget is nothing much, no thrills there. The only thing I want you to look at on the sewer budget is the Webster processing figure. We're looking at that right now through one of the engineers that's been familiar with that setup. So there's gonna be more information to come from that true up, that we call it, because there is some things that he kind of looked at that we may not, should have be paying for. But that's an ongoing process, and it's still in its beginning phases. Everything else is pretty much, what is needed to maintain pumps or change pumps, station renovations. We've got 2 brand-new generators now in use. We've got a new pump system over at the Lions Road facility, which I think we haven't had a call out now in probably 2 months since we put the new pump system in, and we're gonna be moving forward to the other pump stations to try to enhance those pumps so that we don't get any calls for stuck rags and pumps are shut down and all that kind of thing. And that they're self-sufficient in the storm, so we don't have to keep hauling the trailers around to charge power everybody. So it's a little more things to do, but the I&I program is also ongoing, finishing up. There is gonna be a DEP requirement to do a testing of the piping from the water station out to the line that heads down to the sewer department. It's suspected that the backups that occur on West Main Street is due to the irregular pipe sizes going down that way. However, with this latest I&I, I added a change order to increase the coverage of the infiltration program to go into the Alton Drive, Bud Drive, Susan Drive section of West Main Street. All were big infiltrators, which means if we had stopped where we were, we would have been missing a good chunk of water. I'm also working with the Nichols College people to try to identify where a lot of overflow came during the big storm from that. We noticed at the pump station, we were getting a lot of clean water just gushing through there from up on that area there. So they're gonna be, we started the process, now that it's getting warmer, we're gonna start looking at all their manholes, see if there's cracks, piping, cameraing, see if we can make sure that they're all buttoned up too. So,
Does town own that infrastructure up there? Is that
no,
owned by
no,
Nichols?
that's theirs there.
So
Yeah.
do they pay for?
Yes, they pay for it, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they've been very good about it too.
No, yes, I thought. Just wanted to put that out there.
Yep, so that's basically,
All right, thank you, George.
Thank you.
Anybody have anything else? Okay. Mike?
Yeah, George, I'm just glad to see that your line item for,
I almost
you
made
can get up.
I almost made it, it's all right.
You're close.
I'm just happy to see your line item went up for your meters.
Yes,
So is that, please tell me that's not inflation, that's more meters?
no, that's more meters and pallets of meters.
Where are you gonna be at the end of this fiscal year, you think, with percentages in terms of conversion?
It's hard to say right now. I have to see how the results are going, but there's going to be a 20, I'll say 10 to 20% in the good towards the end of the year as we look at how we're.
55% maybe?
Maybe, I mean, I can always hope that way. I just can't tell until I really get the final thing. But every year has been a good little chunk of increase, and so we've been doing a good thing by doing that. I think we're really going to have some success there.
Is he gonna need a capital improvement approval for those meters? Are we gonna have that on?
No, they're split,
$100,000, right?
It's just an increase, though, right?
paying half through the sewer, half the water pays for those meters. They're like 15,000 a pallet or something meters. It's not all at once. We get them in increments.
Yeah, but they're 35 apiece, right? 35,000 for water, 35,000 for sewer, which is over 20 grand each for capital.
35,000 per meter?
No, 35,000.
Oh, they're
To buy the meters.
Yeah, but they're purchased in increments through the year. They're not purchased all at once.
You don't buy it up front and leave it in
No,
the
no.
as needed, you get them.
Yeah. Yeah, we have the money so we can get when we need them.
So we don't need a capital improvement approval on it?
No.
Well, it depends on how you're buying them. If you're spending more, if you're buying over 25 grand a year, then you should have capital improvement.
We've been hitting them on certain, every so many weeks or whatever. They're getting a shipment of like, say, 5,000 in or 10,000 in or whatever. We're not getting any lump sum or anything like that. We just make sure we have the money for them, because we will do them throughout the year.
I just want
Take a
to
look at it, because that is a major capital.
because I wanted to make sure, even if it's spread out over the year.
It adds up
If it's
to-
over $20,000, we
Total.
should,
Total.
just for, legal reasons, we should, capital improvement should approve that, I would think.
But when they're half water, half sewer, they're both under the
So
threshold.
that's why I wanna take a look at it, because I'm
Under
not
the
sure how it's
threshold, we should
split
be all
up.
set.
Yeah, but there's still
I know, but
35,000
it's
each.
the same products.
It's each, not.
I
Oh,
get
that's
it.
what he's saying.
I get it.
We'll take a
It's
look,
not- it's not-
we'll take a look, John, see if how, so.
Okay, thank you.
Dean? It could, Mr. Ruda, is it considered an expert?
Yeah, because it's part of you're upgrading the system, and that's the capital expense.
That's capital,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're not buying 35 grand a year
Right.
in these things.
Right.
It's a one project.
Yeah, it's gonna taper off over time. Mr. Landry, did you have anything else?
No, sir.
I think Mr. Carmignani.
Oh, sorry, Rich.
The debt for both the sewer and the water, is everyone comfortable with it?
Is there a reason not to be?
George took almost 8 seconds. So, if I may, Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Rich.
there was a $1.3 million issuance. It had Dudley, Oxford, and Healy Road. October of 2022 is going to be the last payment. In a lot of the capital planning, we were in anticipation of that final $130,000 coming out of their budget, and coming in is going to be the next amount of debt. There's SRF loans, and then there are regular loans, regular bank loans. There's no debt exclusion, there are just regular issuances. There's $1,795,000. In parentheses, it should be $1,900,000. We received a premium, so we reduced the amount of principal borrowed. So the $1,795,000 is coming up. We're just starting that. The first payments are in this fiscal year. The $1 million was a transition pipe, and then $900,000 in the original article where we went through and we did well 1, 3, 7 Mason Road and your 2 standpipes. That's what this is covering. So we've already made this an issue.
Okay.
One second.
Jay?
Happy to answer the questions as we're going.
Jay?
Okay. So you're not saying that this is inaccurate, you're just providing more detail?
I'm providing the detail on it because there's not 1 or 2 projects, there's 4 or 5, and their timing are important because in '24, there's going to be a few items hit. And that's been the concern of everyone. There is a similar debt that's being borrowed right now, $1,790,000, $1 million for another transitional pipe, $700,000 for engineering work, and then there's $90,000 that's being borrowed. It's the capital management plan. So we have $1,790,000 and $1,795,000. The only reason I make mention of these is they will let you borrow for a pipe in the ground out to 20 years. The engineering portion is for a shorter period of time. So for these 2 issuances, for the next 4 years, you're going to see an additional $125,000 on there because of, they won't let you borrow 20 years for engineering. They'll only let you borrow it for the 5 years. So if the second one is going to hit in '24, you're gonna have till '29 where you have that higher dollar amount. Again, we're trying to make sure that we can get these things paid off reasonably without having a spike in the rates. Onto the SRF money, we have the drinking water, the 5.225. They ended up borrowing the 4.28. It's a reduced amount, but importantly, we're gonna start making payments. There's a small payment in '23, but the big payment starts in '24 for the clean water, which is gonna be the sewer. Again, we're making a small payment in '23, but the first principal and interest payment, again, they're going to give us 1%, 2% when the final loan is there. So the sewer's got 60,000 coming in for that. And then we still have, in anticipation, the $11.5 million, and I don't have a draft for that. It's one of the things for this summer that we're in anticipation of. So we're gonna have 140,000 in water debt be paid off this year, but we have some things coming in.
Rich, Scott?
Yeah, just for clarification, we're only borrowing 4.2 on that 5.2 improvement, but we haven't started the third part of the project yet, which is the tank rehabs. Those will be happening this year, and that's about $1 million, the tank project, portion of it. I think that's right around $1 million. So that will be starting in about 60 days. So that borrowing will be pushed out a little bit.
That wasn't part of the SRF, right?
Yes, it was. They allowed us to push that out because the other two projects pushed out, and we can't empty our tanks to rehab them if our pump stations are still being worked on. So we needed to get that stuff done and the temporary treatment and all of that up and running before we start working on the tanks.
So that will go right up to the 5 point something on the.
It'll get close.
Okay.
It'll get, it's a little under, but it's pretty close.
Thanks, Scott. All right, anything else on water sewer?
Anybody on FAA's got any questions at all?
Okay, all right, well, with that, Mr. Sullivan?
I just want to make note, Mr. Chair,
Okay,
the people that have a copy of the budget are people that want a copy. The last page lists Dudley, Charlton, BAPA, state assessments, and those numbers are still fluid. Mr. Bruder had to put something in there. Notations in the column, certain percentages rise. So I don't want people to think that the schools is over by no stretch. Anybody wants to pay attention to those numbers, those are gonna be, that's gonna be the big moving target. We have to get a firm number on.
okay, thank you, Mr. Sullivan. All right, with that, the chair will declare this hearing recessed and continue to March 28th. And board's vote to take any action relative there too. Mr. Ruda, do we have anything to vote on, or no?
No, I don't think so, Mr. Chairman. I just put that in there as a.
Yep, just in case, okay, perfect. All right, thank you guys for all your hard work on that. That was a really good exercise. We have no student rep today. Departments, do you have anything else? Weekly stuff? No? Okay, Mr. Weiner?
Just in case you see some activity, we had a plan out with Bay Path a few years ago to redo our dispatch center. So when we switched over to the regional, we had them come and look at it. So they built us some cabinets and doing some other work. So they're going to come down and put in new desks, tables, mailboxes, all that stuff painted up for us. So we encumbered the money about maybe 4 years ago, but through COVID and everything else like that, we couldn't get it done. So they're finally starting that. So that's in the works as we speak. So hopefully it's done this week or early next week. So if we see anything like that going. And also too, just to answer Mr. Sullivan's question from before, I did some quick work on it. When we switched over in 2012, we had 9 individuals under the the old Quinn Bill program, we had 2 under the stipend program. And so at this point, we have 6 under the old program and 7 under the new stipend program. So we have there, so. And I can get you further details if you're looking for those.
I'll talk to you.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Thanks, Chief. All right, George.
Yeah, real quick, I know you're sick of me. Just so everybody know, that's gonna be going online very soon, as soon as we get those parts in. It's gonna be hydrant flushing going on next many months, a little bit slower than usual, and we're doing some GIS mapping with that too, to slow it down. The tank projects will be starting, at Bates Tank will be starting around May timeframe. April timeframe, they'll be doing the pressure reducer valve at Mason Road, so that's gonna just inconvenience people for about a day or so. There'll be also coming up in the works Dresser Hill tank, which we're not sure yet if we can get that in this year, depending on the stations getting online. And it's gonna be coming up, we're gonna be doing a water main project from Station 1 to the new treatment facility. That's coming up in the works, and lots of fun from there. And the treatment center itself.
Just in time to retire, George.
Jay.
That sounds like a lot of rave alerts.
Oh, really? Yeah? Well, yeah.
That's why the budget's so high.
Yeah, thank you.
Just in time to retire, George.
Touche. All right. Next item, board member comments. Kerry,
I don't have anything.
Mr. Sullivan.
Just want to echo what you said, Mr. Chair. Thank everyone for their work on the budget. FAA's here tonight. Some members of the public.
Yeah,
Busy time.
yeah.
Sure is.
Jay.
I agree. Really nice job by everyone to be prepared, and the conversation was informative and wasn't a lot of smoke.
Agreed.
Well, that starts in April.
All right. Item 10, adjournment.
Motion adjourned.
Motion by Mr. Johnson.
Second.
Second by Mr. Sullivan. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous? Thank you, everybody. All right, good night.
It starts in